Lately, I've been changing. Mutating into something that I never thought that I'd be. A horror nerd. Now, it's no secret that I'm a big fan of horror games. Ah! Oh my god! But horror movies are a completely different medium. When you play horror games, you have full control of your movement, and at least have the illusion of control during the stories. But when you watch horror movies, you're just a spectator watching from a distance with literally no control, and all you can do is sit and wait for the scares, which is the main reason I never liked horror movies. However, on the 15th of October 2021, my favourite metal band of all time, Ice Nine Kills, released their new album, The Silver Scream 2, Welcome to Horrorwood. The premise of this album and its predecessor, The Silver Scream, is that all the songs are based off various horror movies, and as someone that cowers anytime the funny jump scare man comes on screen, I haven't seen any of these movies, and I thought it'd be really fun to watch them all. I absolutely loved the vast majority of these films. I wasn't a big fan of a couple of them, as they either confused me, didn't live up to the hype, or were cabin fever.
Pancakes!
No pancakes.
Pancakes!
No pancakes!
However, one of these films really stood out to me, being one of my favourite horror films of all time, but also being the only film that broke me. David Cronenberg's The Fly. If you haven't already seen The Fly, I highly recommend you watch it before this video. When me and my good friend Epic Louis set out to watch this movie together, we were expecting a goofy movie about a dude becoming a fly. However, being completely new to body horror, this movie was so much more than we were prepared for. Let me just say, there's a reason Ted Niverson said.
If you've ever seen The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, this reminds me of The Fly with Jeff Goldblum.
In this video, I'm going to be talking you through the movie, explaining why I love it so much, and also explaining why I hated watching it. So if you've already seen the movie before, or have literally no fear and aren't afraid of spoilers, let's jump straight into the insanity that is The Fly. Fuck, now I have to watch the movie again. After the wicked title card, the movie begins at some sort of dull-looking science party. We are quickly introduced to our two main characters, Seth Brundle, played by Jeff Goldblum, and Veronica Quaife, played by Gina Davis. I'm going to get this out of the way early. It is so weird seeing Jeff Goldblum this young. It makes sense because it's an old film and, you know, he's going to look younger, obviously, but for someone that grew up alongside fucking cats and dogs, this is weird to me. If he doesn't look like this, or even this, it's weird. Seth Brundle explains to a random woman that he's never met before that he's making something that is going to change the world and invites her to his lab to look at it. For some reason, she accepts. He directs her to an old beat-up apartment complex and brings her into his lab. He then starts playing piano for literally no reason. He's all, hey, look at my stuff. And she's all, you don't got any stuff. And he's like, fucking telepod to me. And she's like, that isn't even a word, bro. And then he's like, give me free shit. And she's like, I ain't got free shit. Take my stock in. This bit fucking sucks. Anyway, time for me to nitpick. This woman makes bad decisions. First, she willfully follows this random man she's never met before into a beat-up apartment and into his dingy-ass lab. And then she says she doesn't have any items on her, so removes clothes. The literal next scene, she is holding a bag, and minor spoiler alert, she is a journalist, and later pulls out a cassette player and a blank tape. She obviously has more stuff in her bag. Why is she stripping for him? Surely she has like a notebook or even a pen. She may have a pen to write with because she's a journalist and she's recording this. Why is she stripping for him? It could be a weird form of seduction, but she doesn't seem at all interested in this dude. Like, what? Why is she doing... I'm overthinking this. He teleports the stocking and she finally believes him. She pulls out the player to record his explanation. He realizes she's a journalist, gets annoyed, and she leaves with the tape. She brings it back to her editor, who doesn't believe her. Seth Brundle comes into the office and invites Veronica for jump scare burgers. In a very thin Burger King, Seth asks Veronica to work with him and publish a book about the telepods when they're complete. For some reason, she says yes. He followed you to your office. How are you still into this dude? Veronica goes home to discover that her editor is in her shower. We then discover that her and her editor were dating for a while. He's clearly manipulative and a straight up asshole, but I like how the film doesn't show this in a lot of detail. He's very calm with Veronica, but every word he says pisses her off more and more. He actively tries to get his own way and refuses to take no for an answer. But this is all shown with a very calm scene. No fights or arguments take place as he shuts down every argument before it can begin. We can easily infer that this guy was an emotionally abusive ex-boyfriend without the movie showing us what happened or even telling us that they were dating. It's just small stuff like this that makes me really appreciate this film. Even though there are only 3 real characters in this movie, they're all really well written, and it's undeniable proof that you don't need a high body count for a great horror movie. Veronica kicks him out and he just laughs it off and leaves. Trigger warning, graphic and depressing scene up ahead, so please prepare yourselves. Seth puts a baboon in the telepod, and that blurry mess on your screen is what happened to it. You were a good baboon. Rest in peace, my brother. Justifiably, Seth reacts the same way I do after I lose a game of Valorant.
Fuck is what I'm thinking.
Good.
And what does Veronica do to help Seth deal with this huge failure and the death of one of his monkeys? After the Seth rolls onto a random Arduino looking thing, I don't know, I'm not Michael Reeves, and it cuts his back. Veronica pulls it out and Seth wants to try an experiment. He teleports a piece of steak and cooks it alongside a regular steak to see what it tastes like. The teleported one tastes weird and he has an epiphany and starts coding. Veronica goes to a random clothes store to buy Seth a jacket and she runs into her ex-boyfriend where he tells her that he followed her and camped outside Seth's lab to stalk her.
Don't you get it? I am finally onto something that's big. Huge.
Yeah? What? His cock?
Okay, you got me there, movie. That was good. But seriously, you are sleeping with a dude that stalked you to your office. Your ex is a straight-up stalker. How the hell is your taste in men this bad? Back at the lab, Seth teleports another baboon. But don't worry, this is an extra good monkey that got the ability to live for Christmas. So it's a happy ending.
I think it's time for champagne.
Seth and Veronica begin to celebrate, and as they drink more champagne, they end up defining their relationship as a quote-unquote romance, even though Veronica has only met this guy a few days prior. Wear that hat, bozo. As Seth goes to order food for the two of them, Veronica gets a large letter from her editor. The letter is the front page of her story on Brundle that she never finalized with him after Seth told her not to report on it yet. And the letter was sent straight to Seth's lab, which shows that the editor wanted Seth to find it and get mad at Veronica and ruin their relationship. Fuck this guy. Veronica runs off to shout to her editor, who admits to using her job to keep her in his life, and then asks if they can have. She then quickly says no and leaves. Back at the lab, Seth is drunk and talking to the good monkey and manages to piece together that Veronica is working for her ex-boyfriend. Being the overthinking stress head he is, Seth begins to get paranoid that they are sleeping together again and has a very bad idea. Seth gets into the telepod, and as the door is closing, a fly manages to sneak in. Usually I'd point out how Seth should have heard the fly because of how damn loud they are. However, at this moment, Seth is drunk and upset, and he's probably thinking about all the bad things Veronica could be doing, and all the bad things that could happen to him during teleportation. So I'll let this one slide. Seth is successfully teleported, and emerges from the telepod as a new man. But he will not stay that way for long. We're around a third of the way into the movie, and the main focus of the plot has only just begun. And on top of that, the actual body horror stuff doesn't properly begin until the halfway mark of the film. And personally, I really like this choice. The story so far is really interesting, with the love triangle dynamic coming into play, as well as the professional dynamic of the journalist and the scientist making this insane discovery together. It's really interesting. Even without the horror aspects, I think this would still be a really good movie. I think the sci-fi elements will make it really interesting, and seeing what role they could play in the invention of this could be really interesting to see. But I also really like this choice because seeing as the film only has 3 real characters again, it gives us time to build an emotional attachment to these characters, which greatly impacts the rest of the movie. If the movie gave us about 10 minutes of character development and an hour and 20 of random body horror stuff, No one would care about it. A lot of horror in this movie doesn't come from its visuals, but its portrayal of the characters, and you'll see what I mean soon. Veronica comes back to the lab to find Seth asleep in his bed. She wakes him up, and he tells her that he went through the telepod. She's rightfully concerned, and Seth asks her if she's sleeping with her editor, and tells her that he's paranoid. She obviously says that she isn't sleeping with him, and that there is no reason to be paranoid, and then instantly tells him that her editor is still in love with her. You are really helping this dude's paranoia, bro. Remember that Arduino cut from earlier? Well, there are random hairs growing out of it now. As Seth and Veronica are sleeping, a fly buzzes around the room and Seth catches it without looking. I looked it up, and flies have more than 6 times the human reflex speed, so this scene checks out. God, I hate it when a movie is well written and doesn't let me nitpick. Veronica gets out of bed in the middle of the night to see Seth stood in the middle of his lab in complete silence. He sits down and starts doing loads of random gymnastics in his chair. I'd have this reaction too. Seth then grabs a bar and starts doing more crazy gymnastic stuff. The film is clearly trying to show us that he has super strength due to the fly genetics, but Jeff Goldblum was already somewhat built before teleportation. I would have liked it more if Seth started as like a scrawny weak dude and then got ripped after the teleportation to make the scene truly insane. In the next scene, Seth and Veronica are walking through what looks like a market. I don't know how many of you have been paying attention so far, but Seth is actually wearing the jacket that Veronica bought him earlier. Earlier in the film, there's a scene where Veronica criticizes Seth for only having 5 sets of the exact same clothes, and he only changed his outfit after teleportation. This isn't the film's way of telling us that Seth is embracing Veronica and connecting with her more because he's wearing what she bought him. It's the film's way of telling us that Seth is slowly losing himself and his humanity. Seth and Veronica go to a coffee shop where Seth puts way too much sugar in his coffee.
Do you normally take coffee with your sugar?
What?
Seth mentioned how he asked the computer what changed and what's making him feel so quote-unquote great and strong, and the computer has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. He's asking the wrong questions. Jeff Goldblum's acting here is incredible. He talks fast, moves fast, constantly changing topics and keeping up with everything around him. By this point, I could actually believe that Jeff Goldblum really is merged with a fly. Back at the lab, Seth and Veronica are once again having... and Veronica stops because they've been doing it for hours and she's tired. Flies don't have great stamina. They are actually proportionate to humans. So, fuck you movie, I'm gonna nitpick. Veronica finds the hairs and Seth tries really hard to keep her there, but ends up letting her go. Veronica cuts some of the hairs and Seth instantly tries to get Veronica to go through the teleporter. When she says no, Seth lashes out and yells at her. Veronica is slowly realizing that something went wrong and Seth refuses to listen, yells at her, and leaves. Have I talked about the soundtrack yet? We're 49 minutes into this movie and I haven't mentioned the soundtrack? Damn, okay. The soundtrack to this movie is absolutely amazing. It perfectly encapsulates every emotion the audience should be feeling and gives the perfect tone to the characters' actions. Earlier in the movie, the soundtrack was used to show how magical and mysterious the whole thing is, and now it's used to show how serious and dramatic everything is. Take this exact scene, for example. Seth is just walking across the street and eating chocolate, but because the soundtrack is so grand and dramatic, we know that Seth is really going out to find someone to send through his teleporter, and he's out to cause trouble. The composer for this movie is Howard Shore, and he's composed multiple other amazing movies like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Hobbit trilogy, Silence of the Lambs, and many more great movies. Seth ends up in a bar and starts chatting to a woman and says that he likes her. Her quote-unquote boyfriend tells him to leave and Seth bets $100 that he can beat him in an arm wrestling match. You're not winning my money. This is all mine. Look at this. Look at this grip I got. You think you got a grip like this? No, I'm literally a fly. I'm an insect.
This fight is
you think
all
you're gonna
mine.
beat me?
I'm
like, look at me breathing. I'm breathing now.
I don't sign
You
Mr.
think you're
Krabs.
breathing?
I'm
No, I'm
just in it
breathing.
for the money.
I got the strength.
No, don't.
I got
No,
the
my arm goes
flight,
this way.
and I got
No.
the fight.
I
I got
got
all
all
the
in.
instincts.
I'm
And you ready? Look at
gonna-
this. Look at the stare. I got look at. I'm gonna
Dude,
do it.
oh, no,
Awesome.
my arm. What
And
are you
you're
doing?
gonna
Dude,
lose.
don't
I need
do
to
it
break
to
the
my
sweat
arm.
and you're dying, man.
No, I need to win the money.
No, give me the money. Check this out.
Oh, you
got your
broke
arm.
my arm.
Easy,
Oh,
man.
that
Easy. You
really
ain't getting
hurts,
money.
man.
Seth takes the woman's hand and leaves. He brings the woman back to his lab, and we can see that Seth physically looks dreadful. The fly is not only taking over his instincts, his emotions, and how he acts, but starting to take over his physical appearance too. Seth teleports in front of the woman, comes out, and they have... This dude's a fucking addict, Jesus Christ. Seth demands that the woman goes through the telepod and Veronica comes in to stop them. The woman leaves and Veronica tells Seth that she got the hairs tested. The hairs aren't human and it seems like insect hairs. Seth says it's ridiculous and Veronica points out how bad he's starting to look. Seth lashes out at her and kicks her out of his lab. Okay, here's your last warning. If you're not good with body horror, I suggest you prepare yourself. I'll probably have to blur most of this scene as it's disgusting and probably not allowed on YouTube, but anyone that's seen this movie knows how bad this is about to get. Seth goes into the bathroom and looks into the mirror. We can see that more hairs have grown on his face and his skin is covered in spots. Oh great, he looks like me. Seth tries to shave some of the hairs off, but as his skin is now so sensitive, he hurts himself and breaks the razor in rage. Next, he bites his nail and ends up pulling it out completely. Then, he shoots some liquid from his fingertips that I'm pretty sure is acidic, but it doesn't burn the mirror, so I'm not entirely certain. And then Seth pulls out another nail and sits back to take it all in.
Oh no. What's happening to me? Am I dying?
Seth runs to his computer to find out what happened to him. The computer tells him that he has been genetically merged with a fly, and Seth begins to realize what's happening to him. I'm not sure if anyone's noticed, but to make recording and editing easier on myself, I've split this video up into stages. And if you have noticed and have no idea what they mean, they are stages of Seth's mutation. Stage 0 was his fully human form leading up to the teleportation, and Stage 1 was the fly taking over his humanity and his instincts. Stage 2 is the fly taking over him physically. Veronica is working and gets a random phone call.
Seth.
How the actual hell do you know that, Seth? Do you recognize his filtered breathing or something? Seth says after 4 long weeks of pushing her away, he needs to see her, and that she was right about teleportation all along. Veronica goes into the lab and finds Seth looking way worse than before. Veronica asks him what actually happened, and he tells her about the fly. Seth is finally accepting what's happening to him, and he's just waiting for the end. Interesting fact, for all future mutations of Seth, I thought that they used different actors with makeup to look like Jeff Goldblum, as he varies in height, weight, and of course appearance. But no one else was credited, so all of this is just Jeff Goldblum in loads of makeup and clothing changes, up until the last point where it's animatronic. I thought that was pretty cool. This is where the emotional connection to the characters really comes into effect. Veronica is trying really hard to find any solution that keeps him alive, and even suggests they go for tests, and Seth quickly snaps back saying no, as he refuses to be a lab rat that they just run tests on. Seth's ear then falls off, and he admits that he's scared and needs help. Veronica goes to tell her editor about Seth, and we're about to see the craziest switch in a movie. Her editor is becoming the good guy. Even though he's telling Veronica to stay away from Seth and completely cut him out of her life, he's not doing this out of jealousy or spite. He actually cares about Veronica, and he wants to keep her safe, and he knows that she won't be safe as long as she's seeing Seth. He's not emotionally manipulative anymore, as he sees the effect Seth is having on Veronica. He actually listens to her and is still calm with her and is willing to do things her way, as he knows that whatever happens, there is no good ending for her. As Seth slowly becomes the villain of this story, the editor slowly becomes the hero by comparison. It's crazy to see this change, as the movie has already convinced us that Seth is amazing and we love him, and that the editor is scum and we should hate him, just to change it up at the last minute.
Do I have permission to claim your body when this is all over?
I was just giving you credit, don't make me take it away. Veronica agrees to tape Seth to show her editor how bad he really is. When Veronica arrives, Seth has learned to climb walls and is walking around the ceiling. This is where the movie throws another weird twist our way. Seth no longer cares about the mutation. He's not scared and he's actually excited to see what happens next. He is a scientist after all, so this is really interesting to him, and we can see that most of his humanity is gone. Seth puts the camera on himself to give a demonstration of how he eats. Much like a fly, his teeth don't work, so he has to essentially spit acid on his food to melt it down and redigest it. It's gross. The editor sees the tape and Veronica runs home crying. Why are you still in this woman's house after I was just giving you credit? Go home, asshole. Her editor asks her what's wrong, and Veronica tells him that she's pregnant with Seth's baby. This film is wild. This is a huge moment, and this scene is extremely well made. The color palette is dark and blue, essentially showing the hopelessness Veronica is feeling right now, and there is no score or audio cue here, just the dead silence as the seriousness of the problem sinks in for the characters. Veronica and her editor go to the hospital where Veronica is giving birth, and uh-oh, that isn't a baby. But don't worry, it was all a dream. Back at the lab, super messed up Seth is sick of being a fly, and he's finding a solution. The best solution he could come up with is merging with more humans to reduce the fly genetics and start making him more human again. He accidentally pulls his teeth out and goes to the bathroom to add them to his quote-unquote collection. And yes, I have to blur this as I'm 99% sure his dick is in there. Veronica visits Seth in an attempt to tell him that she's pregnant, but she can't get the words out, and Seth tells her to leave and never come back, as he's afraid of hurting her when he fully loses his humanity. There's also buzzing buzzing in his voice now like a fly would make, which is really nice and creepy, but flies don't make buzzing noises. The buzzing comes from their wings. And Seth doesn't have any wings, so why would he make buzzing noises? Veronica leaves and the soundtrack kicks our hat's ass on the way out. Veronica runs to her editor that is waiting outside and she demands she goes for an abortion. Seth overhears the conversation and somehow figures out that she's pregnant, even though she never said that she was pregnant or said she wanted an abortion, only that she wanted to quote-unquote do it. What is up with people in this movie just fully knowing what's happening without any context or reason? Veronica goes to the hospital for the abortion and the doctor sends her to a room to get ready. This scared the shit out of me the first time watching it. Seth takes Veronica and begs Veronica to keep the baby as it's all that's left of the real him, and Veronica says that she can't. The editor enters Seth's lab with a briefcase. He opens it to reveal parts of a shotgun which he quickly assembles. He intends on killing Seth. The editor discovers that Seth has integrated his prototype to make gene splicing even more efficient. Seth jumps on the editor and this is the first time they've seen each other since the start of the movie. The editor is shocked at how bad Seth looks, and Seth realizes that the editor is trying to kill him. Seth pushes away the gun, grabs the editor's hand, and spits acid on it. This corrodes his hand in a brutal fashion, and as the editor falls to the ground and tries to reclaim the gun, Seth spits more acid on his ankle and rips his foot off. Seth seems to really enjoy doing this, and is fascinated by the results, which shows that it's gone, bro. His humanity's gone. As Seth goes for the kill, Veronica stops him and calls on the last string of his humanity. Seth asks Veronica to help him become human again, and he tries to force her into the telepod. And as Veronica fights back, Seth sheds all of his skin and fully becomes a fly. I have no idea how much of this I can show on YouTube. Seth throws Veronica into the telepod and locks the door. Seth enters his telepod, and the editor shoots some wires to free Veronica from her pod. Seth breaks out, and as he leaves, he's teleported alone with the metal door. The editor lets Veronica out, and Seth is revealed to have genetically merged with metal. The monster design here is perfect. His limbs and veins are metal while still having his fly exterior and skin. The soundtrack once again is flawless and extremely dramatic and adds so much emotion to this scene. I would watch this movie just for its music alone. Seth crawls forward and puts the barrel of the gun to his head. Seth has finally given up and he wants Veronica to kill him. Gina Davis's acting here is also perfect. You can see the emotional conflict Veronica is having right now, holding on to what's left of her boyfriend and the person she loved, but knowing that there's no turning back and that she needs to kill Seth. Veronica tries to back out of killing him, but gives in and shoots Seth. Veronica falls to the floor crying and the screen fades to black. Yeah, that's it. That's where the movie ends. I cannot say enough good things about this movie. I know I nitpicked a lot and clowned on Veronica for her dumb decisions, but that doesn't make this a bad film. I wouldn't nitpick and criticize her so much if I wasn't so invested in this movie and the story. The acting from everyone was flawless, the music was flawless, the makeup was flawless. I genuinely can't hype this movie up enough. It won a load of huge awards, with the movie winning an Oscar for the best makeup, which was 100% deserved. I actually even had to look up if they had multiple actors for Seth because he looked nothing like Jeff Goldblum when he started to mutate. I only really hated watching this movie for its fucked up visuals, its heartbreaking ending, and that one jump scare in the hospital. A lot of people criticize the movie for ending so abruptly, but personally, I really like that decision. A lot of people would have liked to see the aftermath, but the movie was about Seth and Veronica's relationship, and when Seth died, the relationship was over and there was nothing more to say. Seth and Veronica started the movie together, and they ended the movie together. But if you want to see what happens afterwards, then there's a sequel which begins directly after the first movie ends. It has slightly different reviews, but I haven't actually seen this movie because it's going to be bad. But hey, if this video gets 100 likes, then I'll review the sequel. And I will just clarify before I get shit in the comments, the editor's real name is Stathis Borans, but that's a stupid bozo name, and the editor is just a really cool nickname, so I kept it for the whole video. Plus, he's only really named like 3 times in the whole movie anyway. So that's about it. I spent a very long time on this video, so please consider liking and subscribing to make all this effort worthwhile. But even though it took so long, I think this is the most fun I've had making a video, so I will 100% do more videos like this if that's what you guys want to see. And hey, you know what they say, if it's a gene splicer, then how the hell did the steak and the plate not merge in the telepod? I need answers.